What kind of person screams at an elderly woman over a treadmill? Karen Thompson, that's who. Her voice sliced through the gym's hum of clanging weights and whirring machines, sharp as a knife, drawing every eye in the room. She stood, hands on her wide hips, her face twisted into a sneer that could curdle milk, berating Mrs. Evelyn Carter, a 78-year-old widow who'd been coming to Fit Life Gym for years. Evelyn, with her silver hair tied back in a neat bun, gripped her walker, her frail frame trembling not from fear but from indignation. Karen's tirade was relentless, her words dripping with entitlement as she demanded Evelyn surrender the treadmill she'd been using for her doctor-prescribed physical therapy. The air crackled with tension, and the gym, usually a sanctuary of self-improvement, became a stage for Karen's unhinged performance. Evelyn had arrived early that morning, as she did every Tuesday and Thursday, her routine a quiet act of defiance against age and arthritis. She moved slowly, her steps deliberate, her smile soft but unwavering. The treadmill was her lifeline, a way to keep her heart strong and her spirit stronger. Karen, on the other hand, stormed in late, her gym bag slung carelessly over her shoulder, her eyes scanning for something her sumanito dominate. She'd been a member for barely a month, but her reputation was already infamous. Staff whispered about her complaints. The music was too loud, the towels weren't soft enough, the water fountain wasn't cold enough. Today, though, she'd set her sights on Evelyn, who was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind her. "You've been on that thing for ages," Karen barked, her voice echoing off the mirrored walls. "Some of us actually care about fitness, not just hogging space." Evelyn turned, her eyes wide but steady, and said, "I'm almost done, dear. Just 5 more minutes." Her voice was calm, measured, the kind of tone you'd use to soothe a tantruming child. But Karen wasn't having it. She stepped closer, towering over Evelyn, her finger jabbing the air. 5 minutes? You shouldn't even be here. This gym isn't for people like you." The words hung heavy, cruel, and unnecessary, and a hush fell over the gym. 2 staff members, Jake and Maria, exchanged worried glances from the front desk. Jake started to move toward them, but Maria grabbed his arm, whispering, "Let's see if she backs off." She didn't. Karen's outburst wasn't just about the treadmill. It was about control, about asserting her presence in a world she believed owed her everything. Evelyn, though, wasn't one to bend. She'd survived worse than Karen's tantrums. Decades of loss, pain, and perseverance had forged a quiet strength in her. "Young lady," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through Karen's rant like a bell, "I've earned my place here, same as you. Maybe more." The gym held its breath. Karen's face reddened, her mouth opening for another salvo. But something in Evelyn's unflinching gaze made her pause. For a moment it seemed like she might back down. But Karen wasn't built for retreat. She doubled down, her voice rising to a screech. "You're a liability. I'm reporting you to management." Jake finally stepped in, his voice firm but polite. "Ma'am, let's calm down. There's another treadmill open right over there." He pointed to an identical machine just steps away, but Karen ignored him, her eyes locked on Evelyn like a predator sizing up prey. Maria, meanwhile, slipped behind the desk to call the gym manager, sensing this was spiraling beyond their control. Evelyn, undeterred, pressed the stop button on her treadmill and stepped off, her walker clicking softly against the floor. "I'm done now," she said, her dignity intact. "No need for all this fuss." But Karen wasn't satisfied. She followed Evelyn, muttering insults under her breath, each word a jab at the older woman's resolve. The gym was a powder keg and Karen was the match. What no one expected, though, was how quickly the tables would turn. That night, Evelyn sat at home, her hands steady as she typed an email to the gym's corporate office. She didn't mention Karen by name, but she described the incident in vivid detail, her words measured but firm. She'd been a loyal member for years, and she wasn't about to let one bully ruin her sanctuary. The email landed in the inbox of Sarah Mitchell, the regional manager, who happened to be reviewing member complaints that evening. Sarah's jaw tightened as she read. She'd heard rumors about Karen. Multiple complaints about her behavior had already piled up, but this was different. This was personal. Sarah had a grandmother Evelyn's age, and the thought of someone harassing her made her blood boil. By the next morning, Sarah was at the gym, pulling footage from the security cameras. The grainy video captured everything. Karen's aggressive stance, her finger wagging, Evelyn's quiet resilience. Sarah's decision was swift. She drafted a formal warning letter to Karen, citing the gym's code of conduct, which explicitly prohibited harassment. If Karen stepped out of line again, her membership would be revoked. Sarah also reached out to Evelyn, offering a personal apology and a free month of membership. Evelyn, ever gracious, accepted but asked that the gym consider sensitivity training for members. "It's not just about me," she said. "No one should feel unsafe here." Karen, oblivious to the storm brewing, strutted into the gym the next day, ready to claim her usual dominance. She didn't know about the email, the footage, or Sarah's warning. She didn't know that her outburst had set off a chain reaction that would soon come crashing down on her. She stepped onto a treadmill, the same one Evelyn had used the day before, and cranked up the speed, determined to prove her superiority. Her movements were aggressive, almost theatrical, as if daring anyone to challenge her. The gym was quieter than usual, the other members casting wary glances her way. They'd all heard about yesterday. They all knew Karen was trouble. Then it happened. Halfway through her run, Karen's foot slipped, her ankle twisting awkwardly. She let out a yelp, grabbing the treadmill's rails as pain shot through her leg. She'd pulled a muscle badly. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who'd screamed about fitness was now limping off the machine, her face contorted in pain and embarrassment. Jake rushed over, offering ice, but Karen waved him off, muttering curses under her breath. She hobbled to the locker room, her ego bruised as much as her leg. The gym returned to its rhythm, but the air felt lighter, as if Karen's fall had broken her spell. What Karen didn't know was that Sarah was already drafting a second letter. The security footage from today had caught something else. Karen had been tampering with equipment, adjusting settings on machines she wasn't using, likely to inconvenience others. It was a pattern, Sarah realized, and it wasn't just about Evelyn. Karen's behavior was a liability to the entire gym. Sarah's next move would be decisive, but she wanted to give Karen one last chance to change. She scheduled a meeting with her for the following week, hoping the warning would sink in. But deep down, Sarah knew Karen wasn't the type to learn easily. Evelyn, meanwhile, was back at the gym the next day, her walker clicking softly as she made her way to her treadmill. She didn't gloat or gossip about Karen's mishap. Instead, she smiled at Jake, thanked Maria for their support, and started her routine. Her presence was a quiet reminder of resilience, of the power of dignity in the face of cruelty. The other members noticed, some even stopping to chat with her, their respect for her growing. Evelyn wasn't just a senior at the gym. She was a symbol of something bigger, proof that strength isn't always loud or flashy, but sometimes comes in the quiet persistence of someone who refuses to be broken. Karen's leg throbbed as she sat in her car outside the gym, her pride stinging more than the muscle she'd pulled. She didn't see it as a consequence, only as bad luck, another reason to lash out. She spent the evening icing her leg and typing a scathing review of FitLife Gym on every platform she could find, accusing the staff of negligence and the equipment of being faulty. Her words were venomous, but they lacked the precision of truth. She didn't mention her outburst or Evelyn, framing herself as the victim of a poorly run facility. By morning, her reviews had garnered a few likes from strangers online, feeding her sense of validation. She didn't know Sarah had already seen the security footage that told a very different story. Sarah, meticulous and fair, wasn't one to act on impulse. She cross-referenced Karen's complaints with the gym's maintenance logs, which showed every treadmill had been inspected just a week prior. The footage of Karen's fall revealed no equipment failure, only her own reckless speed and poor form. Sarah's patience was wearing thin, but she wanted to handle this by the book. She sent Karen the formal warning letter, detailing the harassment incident with Evelyn and the equipment tampering, along with a clear warning. One more violation, and her membership was gone. Karen received the letter that afternoon and scoffed, tossing it onto her kitchen counter. "They wouldn't dare," she muttered, convinced her complaints would cow the gym into submission. But the gym wasn't her only battleground. Karen's behavior had a history, one that was about to catch up with her in a way she never expected. At her office job, she'd been written up twice for snapping at colleagues, her temper flaring over minor slights like someone taking her parking spot. Her boss, Mr. Daniels, had been lenient, but whispers of her gym outburst reached him through a coworker who'd been at FitLife that day. The coworker, a quiet woman named Lisa who'd seen Karen's tirade against Evelyn, mentioned it casually during a break. "She was screaming at this sweet old lady," Lisa said, shaking her head. "It was awful." Mr. Daniels' brow furrowed. He'd been looking for a reason to address Karen's attitude, and this was the final straw. He scheduled a performance review for her, but Karen, oblivious, continued her rampage. Back at the gym, the atmosphere had shifted. Members were talking, not just about Karen's outburst, but about Evelyn's grace under pressure. A few regulars started a small initiative, leaving encouraging notes on the gym's community board for Evelyn, praising her resilience. One note, written in neat cursive, read, "You're an inspiration, Evelyn. Keep shining." Evelyn blushed when she saw it, waving off the compliments, but the gesture warmed her. The gym was reclaiming its sense of community, and Karen's absence due to her injury felt like a brief reprieve. But the calm was short-lived. Karen, fueled by her perceived injustice, decided to return, her legs still tender but her ego fully intact. She wasn't about to let that old woman or the gym staff win. Here's where the twist hit, a quiet moment that shifted the story's weight. Unbeknownst to Karen, Evelyn wasn't just a random senior. She was a retired lawyer who'd spent decades advocating for elder rights, her name still respected in legal circles. Evelyn had kept this to herself, not wanting to intimidate anyone, but after Karen's outburst, she'd reached out to an old colleague, a judge who still sat on the bench. Over coffee, Evelyn shared the incident, not for vengeance but for advice. "Should I let it go?" she asked. Her friend, Judge Harlan, frowned. "People like that don't stop unless they're stopped," he said. He suggested Evelyn file a formal complaint with the gym's corporate office, not just for herself but to protect others. Evelyn hesitated. She hated conflict but agreed to consider it. Karen's return to the gym was a spectacle. She limped in, her face set in a scowl, and made a beeline for the front desk, demanding to speak to the manager. Sarah, who'd been expecting this, stepped out, her expression calm but unyielding. "Ms. Thompson, we've addressed your behavior in the letter," Sarah said, her voice steady. "This is your last warning." Karen laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You think you can scare me? I'll sue this place for discrimination." The threat hung in the air, but Sarah didn't flinch. She'd dealt with bullies before, and she knew Karen's bluster was just that, bluster. What Karen didn't know was that Sarah had already consulted the gym's legal team, who'd advised her to document everything. Every word Karen said was being recorded, not just by the cameras but by Maria, who discreetly took notes behind the desk. The confrontation escalated when Karen spotted Evelyn across the gym, back on her treadmill, moving slowly but steadily. Something snapped in Karen. She marched over, ignoring her limp, and started shouting again. "You're still here? You're the reason this place is a joke." This time, though, the gym wasn't silent. A member, a burly man named Tom who'd been lifting weights nearby, stepped forward. "Enough," he said, his voice low but firm. "Leave her alone." Karen turned on him, her face purple with rage, but Tom didn't back down. Other members began to gather, not to gawk but to support Evelyn. The tide was turning and Karen, for the first time, sensed she was outnumbered. Sarah stepped in before things got physical. "Ms. Thompson, you're done here," she said, holding up a termination letter. "Your membership is revoked, effective immediately." Karen's mouth fell open, her bravado crumbling. "You can't do this," she sputtered. But Sarah was already motioning for Jake to escort her out. The gym erupted in quiet murmurs as Karen was led to the door, her limp more pronounced, her face a mix of shock and humiliation. Evelyn, meanwhile, kept walking, her eyes fixed on the treadmill's display, her heart steady. She didn't need to say a word, her presence was enough. Karen's downfall didn't end at the gym. Back at her office, Mr. Daniels called her into his office the next day. The performance review was brutal. He cited her pattern of disruptive behavior, including the gym incident, which Lisa had detailed in a formal complaint to HR. "You're on probation," he said. "One more incident, and you're out." Karen's world was shrinking, her actions catching up to her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She left the meeting in a daze, her legs still aching, her mind racing with excuses. But deep down, a tiny part of her wondered if she'd gone too far. Evelyn, meanwhile, became a quiet hero at the gym. Members started calling her Miss Evie, a nickname born of respect. She didn't revel in Karen's punishment, but she felt a weight lift. She'd stood her ground, not just for herself but for everyone who'd ever been bullied by someone like Karen. Her email to corporate had sparked a change. FitLife introduced mandatory respect workshops for all members, a policy Evelyn had quietly suggested. The gym felt like a community again, stronger for it. Karen sat alone in her apartment, her leg propped on a cushion, the pain a constant reminder of her fall. The gym's termination letter lay crumpled on her coffee table, next to the performance review notice from work. She tried to fight back, posting more rants online, but the tide had turned. Her reviews were flagged as defamatory, and the gym's corporate office issued a public statement affirming their commitment to member safety. Karen's name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew who it was about. Her social media accounts, once a platform for her complaints, were now flooded with comments calling her out. "Bully," one read. "Karma's real," said another. For the first time, Karen felt the sting of consequence, but she wasn't ready to admit fault. Not yet. At FitLife, the atmosphere was brighter. Evelyn's presence had become a quiet rallying point. Members went out of their way to greet her, some even joining her for her slow walks on the treadmill, turning her routine into a small social event. Jake and Maria, inspired by her resilience, started a Member of the Month program, and Evelyn was the first recipient. The award was a simple plaque, but when Sarah presented it to her, the gym erupted in applause. Evelyn, flustered but touched, said, "I just come here to walk, you know. You all make it special." Her humility only deepened the respect she'd earned. Karen, meanwhile, was spiraling. She tried joining another gym, but her reputation followed her. A quick Google search of her name brought up her reviews and the gym statement, and the new gym's manager politely declined her application. At work, her probation hung over her like a guillotine. She kept her head down, avoiding confrontations, but the damage was done. Colleagues whispered, and Mr. Daniels kept a close eye on her. Karen's world, once built on bluster and entitlement, was crumbling under the weight of her own actions. The legal consequences came next. Evelyn, after much thought, had taken Judge Harlan's advice and filed a formal complaint with the gym's corporate office, which escalated to a small claims court case. She wasn't seeking money, just an official acknowledgement of the harassment and a guarantee that FitLife would enforce stricter policies. The court date was set, and Karen was summoned. She showed up, her legs still in a brace, her attitude defiant but shaken. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, reviewed the security footage and Evelyn's statement. "Ms. Thompson," she said, "your behavior was not only disruptive, but targeted an elderly member with clear intent to intimidate." Karen tried to argue, claiming discrimination, but the judge cut her off. The evidence speaks for itself. The ruling was swift. Karen was ordered to pay a small fine and complete 20 hours of community service at a senior center. The irony wasn't lost on Evelyn, who attended the hearing quietly, her walker by her side. She didn't speak, but her presence was enough to underscore the justice of the moment. Karen left the courtroom, her face pale, her bravado gone. The community service would force her to face the very demographic she'd belittled, a punishment that felt both poetic and necessary. Back at the gym, Evelyn's story spread beyond the walls of FitLife. A local newspaper picked it up, running a feature on her titled, "The Senior Who Stood Up." The article didn't dwell on Karen but focused on Evelyn's quiet strength and the gym's renewed commitment to inclusivity. Readers flooded the paper's website with comments, praising Evelyn and sharing their own stories of standing up to bullies. The gym saw a surge in new members, drawn by its reputation as a place where everyone, regardless of age or ability, was welcome. Karen's community service was a turning point, though not in the way she expected. At the senior center, she was assigned to help with activities, from serving meals to reading aloud. The seniors were kind but firm, calling her out when she snapped or sulked. One woman, a spitfire named Clara, reminded Karen of Evelyn. "You don't get to choose who deserves respect," Clara said one day, handing Karen a stack of books to sort. "You earn it by giving it." The words hit harder than Karen wanted to admit. For the first time, She started to see the world through someone else's eyes. Months later, Karen finished her service hours, but something had shifted. She didn't return to her old ways, at least not fully. She avoided gyms, sticking to home workouts, and at work, she kept her temper in check. The change wasn't dramatic. She wasn't suddenly a saint, but it was enough to keep her job and avoid further trouble. She never apologized to Evelyn, but she didn't need to. Evelyn had already moved on, her life richer for the community she'd helped rebuild. Evelyn's legacy at Fit Life grew. The Respect workshops became a model for other gyms in the chain, and Evelyn was invited to speak at a regional fitness conference about inclusivity. She laughed at the idea at first, saying, "I'm just an old lady who likes to walk." But she went, her walker clicking as she took the stage, and her words, simple, honest, and heartfelt, brought the room to its feet. "We're all here to get stronger," she said. "Not just our bodies, but our hearts." The gym never saw Karen again, but her story lingered as a cautionary tale. Members would point to the treadmill where it all happened, whispering about the day Karen picked a fight and lost more than she'd bargained for. Evelyn, though, didn't dwell on it. She kept coming, kept walking, kept smiling. Her strength wasn't in winning battles, but in showing others how to rise above them. And in that quiet, steady way, she changed the gym and everyone in it for the better.